Gen Z is the most medicated, most high, most chemically dependent generation in human history. And nobody wants to say it out loud. Here's what's actually happening. Walk through any college campus right now. Half the people you see are on something. Not in a dramatic way. Not in an after-school special way. In a quiet, normalized, completely invisible way. Adderall before the exam. Xanax after the party. Weed to sleep. Nicotine to focus. Alcohol to feel social. Mushrooms to feel something real. Lean to slow it all down. Coke to speed it back up. And the scariest part? Most of them don't even think it counts. Because this generation didn't get addicted the way their parents did. There's no single rock bottom moment. Know that it might expired. It's slower than that. Way slower. It starts with a prescription. Or a vape someone passed at a party. Or an edible someone said was mild. Or a Xanax someone said was just to take the edge off. And then one day you realize you can't get through a Tuesday without it. That's how it happens. Not loud. Quiet. Now here's the part people get wrong. They look at Gen Z and say the problem is weakness. Bad parenting. Soft kids. And maybe some of that is true. But that's not the full story. Because Gen Z grew up inside something no generation ever had to survive before. A world specifically engineered to make them feel not enough. Think about what this generation woke up to every single morning since they were 12 years old. A phone full of strangers living better lives. Better bodies. Better relationships. More money. More friends. More everything. And the algorithm making sure the gap between their real life and that highlight reel never stopped feeling massive. So their nervous system started running on anxiety by default. And what do you do when your nervous system is running hot every single day and nobody around you is talking about it honestly? You find something that turns the volume down. That's where the drugs come in. Not because this generation is broken. Because they're human. And humans self-medicate pain. They always have. The difference is that right now the pain is bigger and the access is easier than at any point in history. Fentanyl in pressed pills that look like Percocet. Coke cut with things people can't identify. Vapes with no ingredient list. Research chemicals sold online with one-day shipping. A full black market sitting inside apps on the same phone used to do homework. And a generation that is already struggling just reaches for it. Here's what the numbers actually say. Overdose deaths in people under 25 have more than doubled in the last 5 years. That's not a slow trend. That's an emergency. The majority of those deaths now involve fentanyl, and most of the people who died didn't even know they took it. They thought it was something else. They thought they were fine. Now let's talk about the drugs nobody talks about. Because when people say Gen Z is addicted, they picture a stereotypical image. But most of the addiction in this generation looks completely normal from the outside. The finance student microdosing mushrooms every 3 days because it helps him focus. The girl who hasn't slept without melatonin and weed in 2 years, but calls herself sober. The guy who drinks every single weekend, can't remember the last time he didn't, but thinks he's fine because he's not drinking alone. The kid who's been on Adderall since he was 10 doesn't know what his brain feels like without it, and has never once been asked whether he still actually needs it. That's what modern addiction looks like in this generation. It's invisible. It's socially accepted. It's even aspirational in some circles. And it's doing damage that won't show up for years. Here's the thing about numbing yourself chronically. Every time you use a substance to avoid an emotion, your brain learns that this emotion is not survivable on its own. So the next time it shows up, your tolerance for sitting with it drops even lower. And the time after that, until you can't feel boredom or social anxiety or loneliness or stress for more than 10 minutes without reaching for something. That's not relaxing. That's erosion. And Gen Z is eroding quietly, slowly, in group chats, in dorm rooms, in apartments, in cars parked outside parties. And the culture is not helping. Lean got normalized through music. Xanax got normalized through SoundCloud. We got normalized so fast that raising any concern about it now makes you sound like a 1950s propaganda poster. And I understand why. Prohibition didn't work. Shame doesn't work. Locking people up doesn't work. But swinging all the way to everything is fine, it's all a vibe, isn't honesty either. You can believe something should be legal and still admit it's doing damage. You can think the war on drugs was wrong and still look at the people around you and say, something is off here. Because here's what I actually see. A generation that is brilliant, genuinely, more self-aware, more emotionally intelligent, more globally connected than any before them. They can identify trauma. They can name emotions. They've done more therapy by 22 than their parents did by 50. And still, underneath all of that, there's this low hum of pain that never quite goes away. And instead of sitting with it long enough to understand it, they're treating it the same way every generation before them did, drowning it, just with different substances, with better branding, and with way less judgment from the people around them. So what's the actual answer? I'm not going to stand here and say, just stop. That's not how any of this works. And anybody who tells you otherwise has never watched someone they love try to quit something. But here's what I will say. The version of you that is sober and uncomfortable and anxious and bored, that version is trying to tell you something. And every time you chemically mute it, you push that conversation further into the future. Until one day, you don't know who you are without the substance. That's the moment most people describe as the scariest of their lives. And Gen Z is walking toward that moment in massive numbers right now. Not because they're weak, not because they're failures, but because they grew up in a world that handed them pain they didn't ask for and access they weren't ready for. And nobody sat them down and said, the discomfort you're running from is actually the most important thing you'll ever learn to face. That conversation needs to happen now, before the numbers get worse, before more people die from pills they thought were something else, before another generation looks back and asks, why did nobody say anything when it mattered? This is me saying something.